Snow had been falling for so long that no one in the village could remember when the sky last showed its true color. It drifted down in patient layers, soft as feathers, quiet as breath, until the roofs curved under its weight, and the paths between homes disappeared into smooth white silence. Lamps glowed behind frosted windows, their light warm and steady, like hearts still beating beneath the cold. Somewhere far beyond the mountains, the world continued as usual. But here, time had slowed, wrapped in snow, held gently in stillness. In moments like this, when the night feels endless and calm settles deep into the bones, it's easy to forget everything except the sound of your own breathing. If you find comfort here, listening in the quiet hours, you might softly show your support by liking this story, subscribing to Return Again, or leaving a small comment about where you're listening from, perhaps the U.S., somewhere in Europe, or another corner of the world, and what time the night has reached for you. Imagine those distant listeners as scattered lights across a dark map, all resting together in this same gentle moment. Now let your body sink into whatever holds you. Ease your shoulders. Let your jaw relax. Lower the lights around you, or imagine they dim on their own, one by one. Breathe in slowly through your nose, feeling the air cool and clean, and then let it drift out just as slowly. With every breath, the noise of the day fades, replaced by the muffled hush of snowfall and the deep calm of a village tucked away from the world. When you are ready, allow yourself to step fully into this quiet place, where the snow waits and the story continues. Morning arrived without sound. No birds called, no wind stirred. The village lay beneath a heavy quilt of snow, each home reduced to a rounded shape as if sculpted by careful hands. Doors were buried halfway up their frames, and fences vanished entirely, leaving only faint ridges to suggest where boundaries once were. Smoke rose slowly from chimneys, thin gray lines dissolving into the pale sky, proof that life still warmed itself inside. Inside one small house, a kettle murmured softly on a cast-iron stove. Its gentle hiss was the loudest sound for miles. The windows were edged with frost, delicate patterns blooming like frozen flowers, and beyond them the world seemed distant and unreal. The villagers had learned to move slowly in these days, conserving energy, listening more than speaking. Every action felt deliberate, wrapped in quiet respect for the cold outside. Paths were cleared each morning with patient effort, shovels scraping softly, boots sinking with a slow crunch. No one rushed. There was nowhere to go beyond the village, nowhere the road could lead until the snow chose to loosen its grip. And so life turned inward, toward warm bread, shared glances, and the comfort of knowing others were close by, enduring the same stillness. As the light shifted, barely at all, hovering between dawn and afternoon, the village rested in its isolation, calm and steady. Snow continued to fall, gentle and unhurried, as if time itself had decided to lie down and sleep beside them. The villagers marked time not by clocks, but by small rituals repeated each day. A loaf of bread cooling on a wooden board, boots placed carefully by the door to dry. Hands warmed around cups of tea while steam curled upward, slow and patient. Outside, the snow softened every edge, turning even familiar shapes into something dreamlike and distant. In one home, an elderly man sat near the window, not to look out. There was little to see, but to feel close to the light. It filtered through layers of frost and glass, pale and gentle, resting on his hands as he mended a glove. Each stitch was unhurried. There was no need to rush repairs when the world itself had paused. The quiet gave space for thought, and the slow movement of the needle felt like a kind of breathing. Elsewhere, a woman brushed snow from her doorstep, creating a narrow channel just wide enough to step through. She listened as she worked, the scrape of wood against packed snow, the soft fall of loosened flakes, her own breath steady and calm. These sounds formed a small, familiar music, one she knew well during winters like this. By afternoon, which arrived without much change in light, doors opened briefly as neighbors checked on one another. A nod, a few quiet words, a shared understanding that all was well enough for now. Then doors closed again, sealing warmth inside. As evening settled, lamps were lit early, their glow spreading softly through the snow. The village returned to its hushed rhythm, wrapped in routine and patience, held gently by the long winter night. Beyond the last house, where the village once met the road, there was now only a smooth, unbroken field of white. The road had not vanished, it slept beneath the snow, hidden and quiet, remembering the sound of wheels and footsteps from another season. A single signpost leaned slightly, its top just visible, capped with a soft mound that grew heavier each hour. Somewhere beneath those drifts, messages waited undelivered, journeys paused mid-thought. But the village did not reach for them. There was a shared understanding that the road would wake when it was ready. Until then, the world beyond might as well have been a dream remembered faintly, without urgency or detail. A young woman stood at the edge of the village, her coat pulled close, eyes tracing the blank expanse. She did not feel trapped, only held. The snow made a boundary that felt protective rather than cruel. She breathed in the cold air, crisp and clean, and felt how quiet it was, how even her thoughts seemed to slow. As dusk deepened, clouds thickened, and the falling snow grew finer, like powdered light drifting down. Footprints she had made minutes earlier softened, then disappeared as if the land wished to remain untouched. She turned back toward the village, guided by the warm glow of windows shining like small stars. The road slept on, patient and still, while the village gathered itself for another long night, safe within the circle of its own gentle silence. Night arrived without darkness. The sky remained pale and clouded, reflecting the snow below so that everything glowed with a soft, silvery light. It was a night that asked for lamps and candles, not out of necessity, but for comfort. Inside the houses, flames flickered gently, shadows moving slowly along wooden walls like quiet thoughts drifting by. Families settled into their evening rhythms. Someone stirred a pot on the stove, the spoon making a slow circle, the sound barely louder than a whisper. Another placed logs into the fire, listening to the small sigh as they caught and warmed. Outside, the snow continued its steady fall, each flake landing without sound, layering the village deeper into calm. Beds were prepared early, blankets shaken and smoothed, their weight reassuring. Children listened to stories they had heard many times before, their minds wandering just enough to blur the edges of wakefulness. Adults sat nearby, their voices low, their presence steady, like anchors in a quiet sea. From time to time, the distant creak of snow shifting from a roof reminded everyone of the world outside, patient and heavy, yet never threatening. The village felt enclosed, not confined, as if cupped gently in winter's hands. As the night stretched on, breathing slowed, fires dimmed, and one by one the houses grew still, resting beneath the endless, watchful snow. Morning returned quietly, just as it always did now, without the sound of footsteps on the road or distant engines waking the day. Light seeped through the snow-heavy clouds, a muted glow that felt more like memory than sunrise. Inside the houses, people woke slowly, wrapped in warmth, listening first, always listening, to the deep stillness that had become familiar. Someone opened a door just enough to push snow aside. Cold air slipped in gently, clean and sharp, carrying no scent but winter itself. The snow had risen again overnight, filling the narrow paths cleared the day before. There was no frustration in this, only acceptance. Shovels leaned patiently against walls, ready to be used once more. The work of the morning began in silence. Snow was moved carefully, not thrown, but placed, as if returning it politely to the earth. Each motion was slow and measured, breaths visible for a moment before fading. The rhythm of shoveling became meditative, lift, pause, release, matching the steady pace of the falling flakes. From house to house, figures appeared, dark shapes against white, exchanging small waves and soft smiles. No one needed to speak to know that everyone had slept, that fires had held, that the village remained safe and whole. As the paths reopened and doors closed again, the village settled into another quiet day, wrapped once more in its gentle isolation, breathing calmly beneath the snow. In a world wrapped this deeply in snow, sound behaved differently. It did not travel far or echo loudly. Instead, it settled close, staying near its source, as if reluctant to disturb the quiet. A spoon touching a bowl made only a soft note. A door closing sounded more like a sigh than a thud. Even voices, when they were used, seemed to fold back into the air almost immediately. Inside one home, a woman hummed while she worked, a low, steady tune with no clear beginning or end. The sound barely reached the next room, but it filled the space around her like warmth. The kettle clicked as it cooled, each tiny sound precise and gentle, marking time in its own quiet way. Outside, a man paused mid-step, listening. He could hear the faint scrape of another shovel somewhere nearby, softened by layers of snow and distance. It was comforting to know others were awake, moving, breathing within the same stillness. The village spoke to itself through these small sounds, subtle and reassuring. Snow continued to fall, absorbing everything else. Even the wind, when it passed, seemed to move slowly, brushing the tops of drifts rather than cutting through them. The world felt padded, protected, as if sharp edges had been carefully removed. As the day drifted on, sound remained gentle and close, never demanding attention, allowing thoughts to slow and rest, just like the village itself beneath the endless white. In a small room near the center of the village, a wooden table held a stack of letters tied neatly with string. The ink on their pages had dried long ago, words chosen carefully, meant for places far beyond the snow. They spoke of simple things, of health, of weather, of days passing slowly but safely. For now they waited, patient as everything else. The person who had written them sometimes untied the string, smoothing the edges of the paper, rereading familiar lines. There was no urgency in this ritual. The letters were not forgotten. They were simply resting, like seeds beneath winter ground, trusting in a season yet to come. Outside, the postmarker stood half-buried, its purpose remembered more than seen. No one checked it anymore, not with hope or disappointment. Instead, it had become a symbol of connection paused, not broken. The world beyond still existed, even if it felt very far away. In the evenings, thoughts of distant friends drifted gently through the village, warm and quiet. People imagined them near fires of their own, under different skies, living in different rhythms. The distance felt softened by snow, edges blurred, until longing became something gentler, almost comforting. As night returned, the letters remained on the table, wrapped in string and patience, waiting calmly for the road to wake and carry them onward. As the days folded into one another, the villagers found comfort not in conversation, but in being together without words. In one house, several people sat near the fire, each occupied with their own small task. One repaired a sleeve, another carved softly at a piece of wood, thin curls falling soundlessly to the floor. No one felt the need to fill the quiet. The fire spoke gently for them all. It crackled now and then, a low, steady presence, sending waves of warmth through the room. Shadows leaned and stretched along the walls, slow and unhurried, matching the calm pace of the evening. Outside, the snow pressed close, but inside, space felt wide and safe. A child rested against an older shoulder, listening to the subtle sounds of the room. The breath of others, the soft brush of fabric, the faint pop of sap in the logs. These sounds became anchors, steady and reassuring, guiding thoughts toward rest. Time seemed to loosen its grip here. Minutes passed without notice. Hours slipped by like snow sliding from a roof. There was no sense of being cut off, only of being held together, wrapped in shared warmth and unspoken understanding. As the fire burned lower and eyes grew heavy, the group remained still, breathing in quiet harmony, letting the silence carry them gently towards sleep. Though the sun rarely showed itself, its presence was still felt in subtle ways. Light shifted across the snow during the day, changing from pale silver to a faint blue, then back again, like a slow breath. The villagers noticed these changes not by sight alone, but by feeling, a slight lift in mood, a gentle easing of the cold. At one window, frost thinned just enough to allow a clearer view of the outside world. The snow reflected what little light there was, brightening the room without effort. It felt like the day itself was offering a quiet greeting, brief but sincere. Outside, the drifts caught the light in smooth curves, each one different, each one calm. No harsh lines remained. Everything had been softened, shaped by time and patience. Even shadows rested lightly on the snow, never sharp, never demanding. A woman stepped out briefly, her boots sinking with a muted sound. She paused, letting the light settle around her, feeling how the brightness seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was enough. It was always enough. As the light slowly faded again, the village accepted the return of gray without resistance. Lamps were lit, doors closed, and the snow continued to glow softly in the gathering quiet, holding the last traces of day within itself. At the far side of the village, where the last homes met the trees, the forest stood in deep stillness. Snow clung to every branch, weighing them gently downward, turning tall pines into quiet towers of white. The path into the woods was barely visible now, a faint suggestion rather than a direction. No one entered the forest during these days, not out of fear, but respect. The trees felt older, more patient than the village itself, holding the snow in silence, listening to the long winter breathe. From time to time, a branch released its burden, sending a soft sigh of falling snow to the ground below. A man stood near the edge, watching the trees without moving. He remembered walking there in warmer seasons, hearing birds and wind. But now the absence of sound felt complete, almost sacred. The forest did not call to be explored. It invited only stillness. Footprints stopped where the village ended. Beyond that line, the snow remained smooth and untouched. It was comforting to know there were places left unchanged, where nothing needed to happen at all. As dusk crept in, the forest darkened slightly, shadows deepening between trunks. The man turned back toward the village lights, carrying the calm of the trees with him, leaving the forest to its quiet watch beneath the snow. Evenings in the village seemed to stretch wider than days, unfolding slowly, without edges. There was no rush to mark their passing. Supper was simple and warm, bowls held carefully in both hands, steam rising in lazy curls. The food tasted richer in the quiet. Each bite noticed, each warmth welcomed. Afterward, chairs were drawn closer to fires, not for conversation, but for comfort. Someone turned a page in a book, the paper making a soft, familiar sound. Another leaned back, eyes half closed, listening to the steady breathing of the room. The world outside could wait. Nothing beyond the snow asked for attention. Windows reflected the inside light, turning glass into mirrors. In those reflections, faces looked calm, softened by the glow of lamps. The storm beyond the walls felt distant, almost unreal, as if the village floated in its own small pocket of peace. The snow outside continued to fall, unnoticed now, building its quiet walls higher. Inside, time melted into warmth and stillness. There was a shared understanding that this moment was enough, that rest was not something to earn, but something to accept. As the fire dimmed and eyes grew heavier, the evening settled fully into night, wrapping the village in its slow, comforting embrace. Sleep came easily in the deep quiet, and with it, gentle dreams. In these dreams, the villagers moved without effort, walking paths that appeared beneath their feet, roads opening softly as they passed. There was no struggle in these visions, only the smooth feeling of motion returning. One person dreamed of the river beyond the hills, flowing freely beneath ice, water still moving even when unseen. Another dreamed of footsteps arriving from afar, not loud or urgent, just present. These dreams did not wake them, they carried them deeper into rest. Outside, the village remained unchanged. Snow gathered, roofs held, trees waited. The stillness of the night matched the calm of sleeping minds, as if the land itself had begun to dream alongside its people. A dog stirred briefly in its sleep, then settled again, breath slow and even. Fires burned low but steady, their warmth lingering in the walls. Nothing asked to be done. Nothing needed attention. As dawn approached, pale and quiet, the dreams faded gently, leaving behind a sense of ease. The villagers rested on, held by the knowledge that even in stillness, something within them continued to move. By now the snow lay deep enough to reshape the village completely. Roof lines curved smoothly, steps disappeared, and familiar corners softened into rounded forms. Yet with its weight came an unexpected gift, silence deeper than any the villagers had known before. They moved with care, aware of the snow's presence above and around them. Roofs were cleared slowly, thoughtfully, the snow sliding down in heavy, gentle sheets. There was no panic in this work, only cooperation and trust in shared effort. Each task felt lighter when done together. The snow insulated everything it touched. Sounds from within homes stayed warm and close. The cold outside felt less sharp, more distant. Even the air seemed thicker, slower, as if encouraging rest. One afternoon, someone paused mid-task, resting on a shovel handle, simply looking around. The village looked different, almost new, transformed into something quieter and softer. The snow had not taken. It had changed. As twilight returned, the weight of winter settled evenly across the land. Inside, hearts felt steady. Outside, the snow continued its gentle work, shaping a world that asked for patience and offered calm in return. There came a day when no one wondered what was happening beyond the mountains. The thought simply did not arise. Without news, without messages, the village turned fully inward, attending only to what could be seen, touched, and felt. The morning passed in quiet tasks, folding cloth, warming hands, tending fires. The absence of outside voices felt soothing rather than empty. It allowed space for attention to settle on small details, the grain of wood beneath fingers, the gentle creak of a chair, the rhythm of breath. At midday, a shared meal was prepared in one home, portions carried carefully through snow-cleared paths. People ate together, slowly, savoring warmth and company. Laughter surfaced once or twice, soft and brief, like snow slipping from a branch. No one checked the sky for signals or listened for distant sounds. The stillness itself became the message. All was as it should be, here and now. As evening arrived, lamps were lit, and the village accepted the quiet without question. The day ended gently, unmarked by headlines or urgency, leaving behind only the calm certainty of shared presence. With the world narrowed to what lay within reach, attention turned lovingly to small things. Buttons were polished between fingers until they shone softly. Cracks in wooden bowls were sealed with careful hands. A loose hinge was tightened, then tested gently, opened and closed until it moved without sound. These acts of care felt meaningful in ways that were hard to explain. Nothing was rushed. Each object seemed grateful for the time given to it, as if warmth could be shared not only with people, but with the things that served them quietly every day. In one house, a woman arranged dried herbs near the stove, their faint, earthy scent mixing with the smell of burning wood. She breathed it in slowly, letting the aroma settle her thoughts. Outside, snow pressed against the walls, but inside, the air felt alive with simple comfort. A man repaired a lantern wick, trimming it just so. When he lit it, the flame steadied immediately, glowing calm and reliable. He smiled, not in pride, but in quiet satisfaction, then set it in its place to wait for night. As darkness returned, these small, well-tended things held their warmth and usefulness, supporting the village through another peaceful evening, steady and untroubled beneath the snow. On some days, the clouds thinned just enough to show movement above them. Not blue, not quite light, but a subtle shifting that suggested the sky was still there, waiting. The villagers noticed this with gentle interest, lifting their eyes briefly before returning to their tasks. Snowfall changed its pattern, too. At times it drifted straight down, calm and even. At others, it floated sideways, slow and wandering, like it was unsure where to land. Each variation was observed without judgment, simply accepted as part of the day's quiet story. A child lay on a bench near the door, watching flakes pass the window, counting them until numbers lost meaning. Their eyelids grew heavy, and the world narrowed to soft white motion and steady breathing. Outside, the snow reflected whatever light filtered through the clouds, creating a glow that seemed to come from the ground itself. The village appeared suspended between sky and earth, resting in a place where nothing needed to happen quickly. As evening approached, the sky's movements faded again into the uniform gray. The change went unnoticed by most, absorbed into the rhythm of rest. Another day closed its eyes gently, ready to sleep beneath the falling snow. Warmth became something the villagers measured carefully, not in numbers, but in feelings. The steady glow on the back of the hands, the way breath no longer showed once inside, the quiet comfort of wool and wood and shared space. These were the signs that mattered. Fires were fed with patience, logs added one at a time, never hurried. Someone would pause to listen after placing a piece of wood, waiting for the gentle catch, the low murmur that meant the flame was content. When it came, there was a small sense of relief, as subtle as a nod between friends. In one house, a kettle was wrapped in cloth to keep its heat a little longer. Cups were warmed before tea was poured. These small choices stretched comfort through the hours, making the long evenings feel generous rather than sparse. Outside, the cold remained constant, firm, but respectful. It did not press inward. It waited. Inside, warmth gathered and stayed, held by walls and care and quiet attention. As night deepened, people settled closer to the centers of their homes, letting the heat cradle them. Breathing slowed. Thought softened. The village rested again, balanced gently between cold and comfort, safe beneath the snow. With no clear marker for days, time began to feel like something falling rather than passing. Each layer of snow marked another quiet interval, settling softly on what came before. The villagers sensed time not by dates, but by how deep the drifts had grown, how often paths needed clearing, how familiar the stillness had become. Someone traced a finger along the inside wall, marking a small line for each morning. The marks were close together, almost touching, like the pages of a book read slowly. There was comfort in seeing them, a gentle reminder that mornings continued to arrive, faithful and calm. Outside, snowflakes gathered patiently, one by one, without urgency. The land accepted them all, holding their weight evenly. Nothing cracked, nothing gave way. Everything adjusted, slowly and quietly. Inside, meals followed hunger rather than clocks. Rest came when eyelids grew heavy. Wakefulness faded when it was ready. Time flowed inward, guided by the body and the soft light of lamps. As night returned, indistinguishable from evening or morning, the village let time continue its gentle fall, trusting it to settle where it belonged. Though the paths through the village were cleared again and again, they never stayed the same. Snow softened their edges, filled them quietly, reshaping them overnight. Yet each morning, the villagers found them easily, guided by memory more than sight. Boots pressed down, leaving shallow prints that followed the same gentle curves from door to door. These paths were not straight. They bent naturally around homes, fences, and old trees. Walking them felt reassuring, like following a well-known thought. A woman carried a small bundle of firewood along one such path, her steps slow and steady. She knew exactly where the ground dipped slightly, where the snow hid a stone. Her body remembered even when her eyes could not see. The path held her just as she held it. From above, the village would have looked like a quiet pattern stitched into white cloth, lines appearing and disappearing, always returning in roughly the same place. This rhythm felt steady, dependable. As the light dimmed once more, the paths softened again, erasing the day's marks. Inside, people rested, knowing that tomorrow the village would reveal its familiar ways once more, calm and welcoming beneath the snow. When night fully settled, it brought with it a deeper kind of quiet. The village did not sleep all at once. Instead, it listened. Walls held the warmth of the day, floors creaked softly as they cooled, and the faint sound of fire settling in the hearth moved like a slow heartbeat through each home. Outside, the snow changed its voice. During the day, it fell almost unnoticed, but at night it seemed to whisper as it landed, a sound felt more than heard. Occasionally, a distant thump marked snow sliding from a roof, followed by stillness again, as if the land had shifted and sighed. Someone lay awake beneath heavy blankets, eyes open in the dark, listening. There was comfort in knowing every sound had a reason, every silence a shape. The night was not empty. It was full of gentle signals, all of them calm. The village breathed together. Inhale, exhale. Fires dimmed but did not go out. Snow continued its careful work, adding weight without harm, silence without loneliness. Gradually, listening turned into dreaming. Thoughts slowed, softened, and drifted away. The night wrapped itself around the village completely, holding it steady and warm beneath the endless snow. At the heart of the village stood a small open space, once used for gatherings, markets, and passing conversations. Now it rested beneath a smooth, untouched layer of snow, its purpose remembered more than seen. A single wooden post rose from the center, capped with white, standing quietly like a marker of shared history. People passed near it each day, skirting its edges along the familiar paths. No one crossed the center anymore. It felt right to leave it undisturbed, as if the space itself needed rest. The snow there lay evenly, unbroken, reflecting the soft gray light back into the sky. A woman paused nearby one afternoon, setting down her basket for a moment. She stood still, letting the calm of the open space settle over her. It felt like standing near a held breath, peaceful and complete. She picked up her basket again without leaving a mark and continued on. In warmer times, voices would have filled this place. Now, silence did. But it was not an absence, it was a presence, strong and gentle, holding the village together without sound. As evening came and lamps glowed around the edges of the square, the center remained dark and quiet, a calm anchor beneath the snow, waiting patiently as the village rested around it. In the quiet afternoons, hands seemed to remember what to do even when minds drifted. Fingers moved with calm certainty, kneading dough, smoothing fabric, sorting dried beans by touch alone. These motions carried memory in them, learned long ago and kept gently alive through repetition. An older woman sat near the window, her hands folded loosely in her lap. When she lifted them, they began to work without instruction, braiding a length of twine with slow, practiced turns. She watched the movement as if it belonged to someone else, comforted by how easily it flowed. The twine grew neat and strong, one quiet loop after another. Nearby, a child traced patterns in a shallow tray of flour, lines appearing and disappearing as the surface shifted. There was no goal, no finished shape, only the soft pleasure of movement and change. The child's breathing matched the rhythm of their hands, steady and unhurried. Outside, snow pressed gently against the walls, listening. Inside, hands continued their small, faithful tasks, keeping time in a way clocks never could. The room felt settled, complete, as if everything needed was already present. As the light faded and lamps were lit, the hands came to rest at last, folded again in warmth. The village held still, trusting these remembered motions to return when needed, calm and ready beneath the snow. Waiting took on a different shape in the village. It was no longer something done with restlessness or hope pinned to a single moment. Instead, it became a gentle state of being, spread evenly across the hours like snow across the land. People waited while water warmed, while bread rose, while daylight shifted slightly across the windows. None of this felt like delay. It felt natural, like breathing or blinking, happening without effort or demand. At one doorway, a man leaned against the frame, watching the snowfall. He did not look for signs of change. No thinning clouds, no break in the storm. He simply observed the steady descent of flakes, finding comfort in their consistency. The snow had not promised anything, and so it could not disappoint. Inside, a woman set aside her work and closed her eyes for a moment, resting without sleep. This pause held its own quiet power, a chance to exist without moving forward or backward, only staying. As evening returned, waiting blended seamlessly into rest. The village accepted both with ease, held by the understanding that stillness itself was doing important work, even when nothing seemed to change beneath the snow. After many days of near silence, the wind returned softly, as if unsure it was welcome. It moved slowly through the village, brushing the sides of houses and lifting loose snow into faint, drifting veils. The sound was low and gentle, more like a breath than a voice. People noticed the change immediately, not with concern, but with quiet curiosity. Curtains stirred, smoke from chimneys leaned slightly instead of rising straight up. The world felt subtly awake again, stretching after a long rest. The wind did not hurry. It paused often, letting snow settle before moving again. When it passed through the open space at the center of the village, it left the surface untouched, respecting the stillness held there. At the edge of the forest, branches swayed just enough to release small cascades of snow, each fall landing with a soft, muted hush. The sound felt like reassurance rather than warning. As night approached, the wind grew tired and slowed once more, easing back into quiet. Inside, fires burned steadily, and the village rested, comforted by the knowledge that even change could arrive gently and leave without disturbance beneath the snow. Meals in the village were unadorned yet deeply satisfying. With supplies carefully tended, food was prepared thoughtfully, nothing wasted, everything appreciated. Warm soups simmered slowly, their gentle, bubbling filling rooms with steady, comforting scents. Bread was sliced thick, the crust firm beneath the knife, the inside soft and steaming. Each bite carried warmth that spread outward, easing the cold that lingered in fingers and toes. Eating became a quiet ritual, done slowly, with attention, as if the body itself were being listened to. People sat close, bowls cradled in their hands. There was little conversation, but glances were exchanged, small acknowledgments that said enough. The shared meal felt like a promise. Nourishment would continue, care would hold. Outside, snow gathered along windowsills, tracing their edges. Inside, steam rose and faded, mirroring the slow rhythm of breath. The act of eating grounded the village in the present moment, anchoring it gently against the vast stillness beyond the walls. As bowls emptied and warmth settled in, people leaned back, content. The simple meal had done its work, leaving behind quiet satisfaction and the ease that comes from being gently sustained beneath the snow. In the long evenings, memories began to surface more easily, not as sharp images, but as gentle impressions. A sound recalled another winter, a scent brought back a distant room. These memories arrived without force, drifting in like snowflakes that melted as soon as they touched. Someone remembered the first snowfall they could recall, how it had felt new and surprising then. Another remembered a summer road, warm dust beneath their feet, the sound of water moving freely. The memories did not create longing. They simply visited, quiet and kind, before settling back into rest. By the fire, an older voice shared a short story, not meant to teach or warn, only to pass the time softly. The words moved slowly, with long pauses between them, allowing listeners to drift in and out of attention. No one minded when the story faded unfinished. The village held these memories gently, like smooth stones kept in a pocket, not examined often, but reassuring to carry. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering old tracks, softening the past into something peaceful. As the fire dimmed and eyelids grew heavy, memories loosened their hold, dissolving into warmth and shadow. The night welcomed the village back into quiet, where thoughts could rest without effort beneath the snow. Without announcements or alarms, the days arranged themselves into a gentle order. Waking came with light, whatever form it took that morning, and rest followed the slow dimming of the world. The body learned this rhythm quickly, settling into it like a familiar song. Morning tasks unfolded softly. A window wiped clear just enough to see the snow still falling. A fire coaxed back to life with careful breaths. Water warmed, hands washed, movements unhurried. Nothing pressed forward. Everything arrived when it was ready. Afternoons hovered in a quiet middle space. People worked a little, rested a little, and often paused simply to be still. These pauses felt important, like the spaces between notes that make the music gentle rather than loud. Outside, the village remained wrapped, unchanged, and calm. Evenings gathered the day back into warmth. Lamps were lit, shadows settled, and the sense of time softened again. The order of things did not feel strict or fragile. It felt kind, forgiving, able to bend without breaking. As night took its place, the village slipped easily into rest, trusting that morning would come again in its own quiet way, steady and unforced beneath the snow. Beneath the deep layers of snow, the ground still remembered every step that had ever crossed it. Old paths, foundations, and stones lay quietly below, holding the shape of the village as it had always been. The snow did not erase these things. It simply rested on top of them, patient and trusting. When people walked, they felt the firmness underneath, subtle but reassuring. Each step pressed gently down, meeting resistance that said the earth was still there, steady and strong. This knowledge brought comfort, a quiet reminder that nothing essential had been lost. A man paused mid-walk, shifting his weight slightly, listening not with his ears but with his body. The snow creaked softly, then settled. Beneath that sound was a deeper stillness, solid and calm. He continued on, footsteps slow, even confident. Inside the houses, floors felt warmer now, insulated by the thick blanket outside. The village felt anchored, held in place by layers of time and care. Snow might come and stay, but it did not carry the village away. As night arrived once more, footsteps faded, paths softened, and the ground rested again beneath its quiet cover, remembering every movement and holding them safely in the dark. There came a moment, subtle and unannounced, when the villagers realized they knew enough. Enough about the snow and how it moved, enough about their stores and their strength, enough about one another's rhythms, needs, and quiet ways of being. This knowing settled in like warmth spreading through a room, steady and reassuring. Questions softened. What mattered most had already been answered by the simple fact of each day continuing. Fires burned. Meals were shared. Sleep came and went. The village existed, and that was sufficient. A woman sat by the window watching the snow trace familiar paths downward. She did not wonder how long it would last. She felt no urge to measure or predict. Her breath moved slowly, matching the pace of the falling flakes, and the thought arose, softly, briefly, that this was enough for now. Outside, the sky held its quiet gray, unchanged and gentle. Inside, hearts rested into a calm acceptance, a sense that nothing urgent was missing. The world beyond could wait. The present moment held everything it needed. As the lamps dimmed and the evening deepened, the village settled into rest once more, carried by the calm of knowing enough, held securely beneath the snow. One morning, the snow felt different. Not lighter, not thinner, but quieter in a new way, as if it had finished saying something important. The air seemed to hold more space between flakes, allowing them to drift rather than fall. The change was so subtle it could only be felt, not seen. A few villagers noticed this while clearing paths. Their shovels moved more easily, the snow lifting without the same weight. They did not speak of it, not wanting to name something that might pass. Instead, they worked slowly, listening with their bodies. Smoke from chimneys rose a little higher before dissolving, suggesting the air was shifting. The sky remained pale, but its gray felt softer, less closed. Even the light, faint as it was, seemed to linger a moment longer on the snow. Inside, people moved as usual, yet with a slight easing in their movements, as if unconsciously responding to the change. Nothing had ended. Nothing had begun. The village simply rested in this gentle transition. As evening arrived, calm remained unbroken. Fires warmed, lamps glowed, and sleep came easily. Whatever the stillness was becoming, it did so quietly, allowing the village to remain at ease beneath the snow. The village seemed to breathe more deeply now, though nothing visible had changed. Inhale, snow settling, air cooling, lamps glowing softly. Exhale, warmth spreading through rooms, shoulders loosening, thoughts drifting more freely. The rhythm was slow and shared, as if every home participated without effort. Someone paused while tying a scarf, noticing how their breath matched the quiet around them. Each inhale felt fuller, each exhale longer. The cold outside no longer pressed inward, it waited politely, allowing warmth to remain where it was made. This balance felt natural, carefully held. In the afternoon, a door opened and closed with less resistance, hinges moving smoothly. Snow no longer leaned so heavily against the frame. A path cleared earlier stayed visible a little longer, its edges soft but present, like a memory that lingered before fading. Inside, people rested more often between tasks, sitting without purpose, simply breathing. The stillness was no longer thick. It was open, spacious, offering room for ease. Even the snow's hush felt lighter, as though it too had relaxed. As night returned, the village breathed out together, settling into sleep with quiet trust. Whatever tomorrow brought would arrive gently. For now, the shared rhythm of breath was enough, carrying everyone softly into rest beneath the snow. Light arrived a little earlier, though no one marked the moment. It was felt instead, a softness at the edges of sleep, a gentle suggestion that the day was stretching. The snow reflected this change kindly, offering back a faint brightness that made rooms feel wider and more open. Someone rose and stood by the window, not to look for signs, but to feel the shift. The frost patterns seemed thinner, their shapes less dense. The sky remained pale, yet it carried a quiet promise, like a word remembered but not spoken aloud. Outside, the village rested in its familiar form, but the air felt lighter against the skin. Steps pressed down, with the same care as always. though the snow gave just a little more easily. The sound it made was softer now, less compact, as if it had begun to loosen its hold. Inside, tasks continued at their gentle pace. Water warmed. Bread was sliced. Hands moved calmly, guided by habit and ease. Nothing needed to change quickly. The day simply unfolded with a little more space to breathe. As evening approached, the light lingered again, just for a moment. Lamps were lit later than usual, and no one remarked on it. The village settled into night, aware only of comfort and calm, resting easily beneath the snow. The snow began to behave differently, not retreating, not melting outright, but easing its grip in small, thoughtful ways. Roofs sighed more often now, releasing thin sheets that slid down with a muted hush. The sound was familiar, yet gentler than before, like a long-held breath finally being set free. People noticed that doors opened with less effort. Windows cleared more easily when wiped with a sleeve. The village did not celebrate these changes. It simply adjusted to them, the way one adjusts to a slightly warmer room without comment. Outside, the drifts held their shape but felt less firm beneath foot. Steps sank a little deeper, then lifted more smoothly. The snow no longer resisted. It yielded politely, as if understanding that it had stayed long enough. In the forest, branches stood a touch taller, relieved of some of their weight. Snow fell from them in quiet cascades, revealing dark needles beneath, steady and alive. The trees seemed untroubled, patient as ever. As evening settled, the village remained calm. Fires burned low and steady. Lamps cast familiar pools of light. The snow continued its quiet work, learning how to loosen without rushing, allowing rest to deepen rather than disturb. The road beyond the village had not been forgotten, only set aside. Now it returned gently to thought, not as a longing, but as a soft awareness. Beneath the thinning snow, its shape felt closer, more present, like a word on the tip of the tongue. A few people stood near where it began, noticing how the snow there felt different underfoot, less deep, more settled. No one tried to clear it yet. There was no hurry to wake the road before it was ready. The memory of it was enough for now. Someone imagined footsteps arriving one day, slow and familiar. Someone else imagined leaving, not with urgency, but with calm intention. These thoughts passed through the village lightly, touching nothing, leaving no trace. Inside, life continued as it had through the long stillness. Fires warmed, meals were shared, rest was taken seriously, honored fully. The possibility of movement did not disrupt the peace. It sat quietly beside it. As night arrived, the road remained covered, resting. The village, too, rested easily, holding both stillness and gentle change together beneath the snow. Deep beneath the snow and ice, water had never stopped moving. It flowed quietly through channels and stones, unseen but faithful, carrying the memory of motion through the long stillness. The village did not hear it at first. It was felt instead, a subtle shift in the air, a softness in the ground near the edges of paths. One afternoon, someone paused near a low place beyond the houses and listened closely. There it was, barely a sound at all, something like a whisper made of patience. The water spoke in a language older than winter, reminding the land that change could be gentle and continuous. Nearby, snow thinned just enough to reveal darker patches beneath, not bare earth yet, but the suggestion of it. The village did not rush toward these signs. They allowed them to exist quietly, without interpretation, without plans. Inside, the presence of moving water brought a deep comfort, even to those who could not name it. It felt like reassurance woven into the day, a promise kept silently beneath layers of cold. As evening arrived, the faint movement continued below, steady and calm. Above it, the village rested once more, soothed by the knowledge that even in stillness, something kind and patient flowed on beneath the snow. Waking grew gentler now, eyes opened without effort, as if invited rather than called. The rooms felt a little brighter, the air a little softer against the skin. Blankets still held their warmth, but there was less reluctance to leave them, a quiet readiness settling in. Someone sat up slowly, listening. The village sounded the same, fires murmuring, snow shifting, but beneath it all ran an ease that hadn't been there before. The body noticed it first, shoulders looser, breath deeper, a calm alertness replacing the heavy drowsiness of earlier days. Outside, light rested longer on the snow, making it glow with a clean, gentle sheen. The air carried a faint hint of moisture now, not enough to chill, just enough to suggest movement. Footsteps sounded softer, less compressed, as if the ground welcomed them. Morning tasks unfolded with the same care as always, yet they felt lighter in the hands. A kettle warmed quickly, a door opened without resistance, small comforts stacked easily, one upon another, creating a sense of flow. As the day continued, the village moved with quiet confidence, neither hurrying nor holding back. Waking had become easy again, a natural return to balance, and with it came a calm readiness to rest later, whenever evening chose to arrive beneath the snow. Even as the snow slowly changed, the village itself remained steady, holding its familiar shape with quiet confidence. Houses stood where they always had, their walls warmed by countless evenings of firelight and breath. Paths still curved gently between doors, guided by memory and habit rather than visibility. People moved through these spaces with ease, no longer needing to think about each step. Their bodies knew where to turn, where to pause, where the ground dipped or rose. The village lived not just on the surface of the snow, but beneath it, carried in muscles, in routines, in shared understanding. A man leaned against the side of his house, feeling the solid wood at his back. The snow no longer pressed so closely there. It rested instead, as if respecting the structure beneath. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the quiet pulse of the place he knew so well. Inside, rooms felt unchanged, warm corners, familiar shadows, the gentle presence of objects that had waited patiently through the long stillness. Nothing had been lost to the snow. Everything essential had stayed. As evening settled once again, the village drew inward, lights glowing softly in windows. It held its shape calmly, securely, knowing that whatever shifted outside, this quiet center would remain, resting peacefully beneath the snow. There were moments now when the snow felt less like a presence and more like a memory still lingering in the body. It remained everywhere, smooth and white, yet its weight no longer defined each thought. The village moved within it easily, as if the long stillness had taught everyone how to carry calm forward. In the afternoon, someone paused at a window and realized they had not thought about being cut off for a long while. The awareness arrived gently, without surprise. Life had filled the space where worry once rested, replacing it with rhythm and trust. Outside, the snow held a softer light. Shadows moved more freely across its surface, stretching and shifting as the day progressed. The air felt open, inviting deeper breaths. Even the quiet seemed lighter, less dense, offering room rather than enclosure. Inside, people rested in chairs, eyes half closed, not from weariness, but contentment. The warmth in the rooms felt complete, no longer something to guard carefully, but something that simply stayed. The snow outside listened, calm and receptive. As evening approached, lamps were lit once more, though the need felt ceremonial now rather than necessary. The village settled into another peaceful night, carrying the snow not as a burden, but as a gentle memory folded into rest. Distance began to exist again, softly and without demand. Not the sharp distance of separation, but the gentle sense that the world extended beyond the village once more. The mountains felt less like walls and more like resting shapes, watching quietly from afar. On a calm afternoon, sound traveled just a little farther. A knock on wood echoed faintly instead of stopping short. A voice carried across the path before dissolving into the air. These changes were noticed with calm curiosity, like hearing a familiar song played more softly than before. Someone stood at the edge of the village and looked outward, not searching, not waiting, just acknowledging space. The road beneath the snow felt nearer now, closer to waking, though it remained still. There was comfort in knowing it existed again as possibility, not necessity. Inside, life remained unhurried. Fires burned gently, hands rested often. The return of distance did not pull anyone away from the present moment. It simply widened it, allowing thoughts to stretch without strain. As dusk settled, the village glowed warmly against the pale land around it. Distance rested peacefully beyond the light, patient and kind, while the village itself settled into evening, calm and ready for rest beneath the snow. The change did not arrive as an ending, but as a gentle release. One morning, the village woke to a stillness that felt open rather than closed. The snow remained bright and quiet, yet it no longer pressed inward. It rested lightly now, as if it had finished its long work. Paths held their shape longer. Roofs stood freer beneath the sky. A faint drip sounded somewhere in the distance, slow, patient, almost shy. No one rushed toward it. No one needed to. The sound was enough, a soft confirmation that the world knew how to move again. People stepped outside and paused, breathing in deeply. The air felt wider, carrying hints of faraway places without pulling anyone toward them. The village felt complete, not because the snow was gone, but because it had been understood. The stillness had taught its lessons gently, without force. Inside, fires burned lower now, more for comfort than necessity. Lamps glowed softly, though daylight lingered nearby. The homes felt the same, safe, warm, familiar. But something inside the walls felt lighter, as if space itself had exhaled. As evening arrived, the village rested once more, not in isolation, but in quiet readiness. The snow lay calm around them, the world breathing softly again, and sleep came easily, like a trusted friend returning home. Thank you for spending this quiet time here, resting inside the slow, peaceful rhythm of this snow-covered village. As the story settles and your thoughts grow softer, allow your body to relax fully, knowing there is nothing more you need to do tonight. If this calm moment brought you comfort, you're always welcome to like the video, subscribe to return again, and leave a gentle comment sharing where you're listening from and what time the night has reached for you. Your presence, wherever you are in the world, is part of this shared stillness. Now let the lights fade in your mind. Let your breathing slow. May your rest be deep, your sleep peaceful, and your night wrapped in quiet warmth. Good night.